Hey Bulldogs, Mr. Russell here. I am super excited to be able to do another lesson with you in Vectornator. What makes this particular lesson extra special for me is we get to hang out with this guy. That's right, Mr. Bird. Let's give Mr. Bird a chance to introduce himself.
I'm Mr. Bird. I fancy myself a birdhouse enthusiast with the last name that I have. So I want to say, welcome to my house.
Welcome to my house, baby, take control now. We can't even slow down. We don't have to go a while.
So, Mr. Bird, I took a little bit of time this weekend, and I created a birdhouse with your name. And we, of course, know that you are studying birds in your classroom. And so, let's dive in. What you see on the screen here is the design that I used for this birdhouse right here. You'll see that it has an oval. It's a rather large hole for letting large birds in there. And of course it has Mr. Bird's name on it. And so I want to take a little bit of time and I want to kind of show you how I did it. Before we move on to creating a new dock, I want to direct your attention over here to the layers because, of course, what do we tell the students, Mr. Bird?
Hey guys, it's all about the layers. It's all about the layers. It's all about the layers.
So, when we're looking here at our Vectornator project, we can see that each element of this project has its own layer. And what's really cool about layers is you can even take like various you can try different things out. Like, so for instance, let me show you what I did. I was kind of playing with the idea of being able to use a bee as a door for unlock that bee. And so I was kind of playing with the idea of using a bee as the door for Mr. Bird's birdhouse. But eventually I kind of thought, well, I would hate to create a situation where a bird was hurting himself trying to get into that bee. But don't let that stop you guys. So let me unlock these other layers here real quick. And you'll see there, I'll blind up. So that's kind of the design I ended up running with. I wanted to show you this design, but show you some other opportunities that you can do with this lesson as well. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and close up this one. We have a skills checkoff list. I was kind of hoping you'd be able to follow. We're going to do the custom size this week is different. We're going to break away from our normal 12 by 12. Our width is going to be, you can go 6 inches or 5.5 inches. And then our height is going to be 9 inches. And the reason we're running with that is because we have a set of bird plans, and that's right here, okay? And so the bird plans have different parts, and I have a video that I'm going to be creating that kind of shows how I made the birdhouse with this Shaper Origin CNC router that we were able to buy this year. And it'll kind of show you how it makes that. But what I want is I need you to make sure that your page is 5.5 inches wide by 9 inches tall. And make sure that you're minding your units. Sometimes students will go, 5.5 pixels or 5.5 millimeters. You need to make sure that it is 5.5 inches wide by 9 inches tall. Otherwise, your project's just not going to export very well. Let me go ahead and take a minute here, and I'm going to go back to my gallery, and I want to show you guys kind of a new trick, and I'm pretty sure that I can rename this. Let me come over here, and I'm going to I can actually rename this project, and I'm going to say birdhouse. Oops. There we go. Instead of it being new document 22, I'm going to be able to call this birdhouse lesson. And for you guys, you always want to name your files. So I'm going to call mine birdhouse David Russell. Okay. Again, I really appreciate it when you guys name your files. and put your name on it. So give it a little artwork name, but also make sure that your name is attached to it as well, okay? So that's done, and it'll help you out when you export later on, and you'll see what I'm talking about in just a little bit. I'm gonna try to make this lesson as fast as I can. So we already have a canvas that is, and you'll see that Vectornator doesn't seem to like to use 1/2 inches, so it rounded the project up to 6. And I found it did that earlier with me as well. But so I guess we're going to be using 6x9, which is totally fine. Just make sure it's 6x9 inches, right? Okay, let's move forward. In the skills checkoff list, there's a few things I want you to work with. I want you to work with text. I want you to work with shapes. I want you to work with nodes. And so I'm going to go ahead and put something together really quick. I am going to stray a little bit from the first design that you saw with Mr. Bird's, like Mr. Bird. And I think I'm going to make a design for me, because this is service learning, and I have a wife who really wants me to make an owl box, okay? And everything that we do is D and J, which stands for Dave and Jamie. And so I'm going to take my logo that I like to use and the font I like to use, which is Mouse Memoirs. And I'm going to try to make sort of a similar shape to what you saw with Mr. Bird's design. But I'm going to make my hole just a little bit different. But I'm going to do some things that we've been learning with. So here we go. Without further ado, let me go over to my layers. And of course, it's all about the layers, right, Mr. Bird? That's right. So I'm going to add a couple of layers here. And a couple of layers. There we go. Cool. And the first layer is going to be the hole, right? The door, if you will. So I'm going to call it hole/door, okay? And to be honest with you, I like the oval that I did on Mr. Bird's, but I think I'm going to try something else. So I'm going to come over here. Now, you could, if I wanted to, and maybe I'll make a couple of layers. You know, there's all sorts of things you could do. I could do a circle like I did with Mr. Bird's, okay? And I could do, if I wanted to put a finger down and make it a perfect circle, I could. If I wanted to make it an oval, I could do that. I will say for this lesson, and I made sure to mention this on the skills checkoff list, you want to make sure that you're blinding your fill on just about everything you do today, because we really want to focus on the lines. Another option you could do is you could come over here to my pen tool, and you could just literally make a door. So there's one right there, one right there, up there, and I'm going to close it up. And then right now you're like, well, Mr. Russell, that doesn't look like a door. That looks like a triangle. And that's because we're going to do some node work right now. So I'm going to come back to my node tool, and I'm going to click on my nodes, and I'm just going to go ahead. And by the way, for those of you Mr. Bird students that are working with us for the first time, it's called node, not nose, okay? So if you hear me say working with your nodes, I'm not saying working with your nose, because, you know, Lord knows, I mean, like, I'm not picking my nose or anything like that. No, I'm working with nodes, N-O-D-E-S. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on this guy. And my mouse is not working with me as much as it should be. And I think I'm going to do that. And I'm going to kind of make it sort of like a whimsical kind of look. And I'm just going to, do that right there. Cool. And then I'm going to come up to my selection. And here I have my door, and I'm going to put it right there in the middle. Okay, very cool. So that's a door. That's my bird door. Okay. It doesn't look like it's totally centered now that I look at it. Let me see if I can get a little better. No, it's not too bad. Okay. Let's move on to the text. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go and make sure, of course, that I lock up my layer for my door. And I'm going to go to layer number 2. And I'm going to call this D and J, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and put that on there. And I'm going to choose, I think I have Mouse Memoirs already, which is a Disney font. I think I already have that in there. But let's see in our style. We're going to come over here to our font. And let's see if it's in the M's. It is not in the M's. So this is going to be a little bit of an opportunity to learn how to install Vectornator. So what I'm going to do is, we know we have Vectornator in the, we have Vectornator actually in the self-service for all students. I'm going to come over here to Safari, and I'm going to go ahead and do a Google search for free fonts, okay? And so I'm going to say free fonts. And I might even, and my favorite that I like to use is Mouse Memoirs. And let's see what we can find here. So be very careful. Sometimes some of these font websites don't exactly, the district doesn't let you in, but we've had a lot of success with students being able to work with an app called Vectornator, again, found in the self-service. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to download. I'm not going to use the Google fonts. I'm going to go to 1001 fonts and look for Mouse Memoirs there. Mouse Memoirs is just a font that I just tend to use a lot. And let me see if I can find the download button. Okay, good. So I have the option for TTF, which stands for True Type Font. And I'm going to see if I can, yep, I'm going to download it. Awesome. And there's also a font format called OTF, which is Open Text Font. So yeah, format. I'm not sure if it's format or font. But I'm going to go ahead. I've already downloaded it. Now, oftentimes when you download things, you got to go to this blue file folder. And there it is right there. I'm going to open up and, click done. Looks like I've already did it. But sometimes these files come to you in the form of a zipped file, okay? But it looks like mine's already been opened up. If you see the font that you download and it says like mousememoirs.zip, just click on that and it'll open up, and then you'll see what we see here on my screen, which says mousememoirs.regular.ttf, which stands for True Type Font. Now, as promised earlier, I was telling you about this app called Vectornator, which is amazing. Super grateful to our district for making it available to us. I'm going to simply, you can see I've got all sorts of fun, really, really fun fonts already here, but I want that one called Mouse Memoirs. So I'm going to hit the plus sign, and I'm going to go to my downloads. And of course, Mouse Memoirs starts with M. So I'm going to come down here. Come back here. There we go. Come back here. And I'm going to come over here to, I should see, there it is. Mouse Memoirs regular TTF. Now, sometimes not all fonts work, but we're going to give this one a shot. So I'm going to click Install Fonts, okay? And I should get a little dialog box that says download this profile. And don't let this confuse you. It's fairly easy once you get it down a few times. So I'm going to say yes, allow, profile is downloaded, great. And whenever a profile is downloaded, the next thing you want to do is you want to cruise over to your settings, which on my computer, my iPad is right here. And in the left right here, you're going to see profile downloaded. So you're going to click on that. And you're simply going to install that profile. The profile is it's sort of like you're giving your iPad permission. You're gonna have to hit install a second time and hit it a third time. And then once you've hit install 3 times, you're gonna say done. And it might feel a little confusing the first time you do it, but let's cruise over to Vectornator and see what we've got. So now I have my text, and looky there, I've got Mouse Memoirs. So I'm going to click D, and J. And I think I need to make my size a little bit smaller. So let me cruise over here and make my size big enough where it kind of fits on there, okay? And there we go. So D and J right there. And I'm using Mouse Memoirs. I'm super excited about this. Can you tell? So in Mr. Bird's design, I put like a little square, okay? And so I think I'm just going to run, with a square because I want to kind of keep the shape of Mouse Memoirs. But I do want to kind of tweak this design just a little bit. So I'm going to come over here to my selection tool, and I'm going to make my size just a little bit bigger. I'm going to make my box fit to the bounds, and then I'm going to bring this up a little bit. But I don't like how the and sign looks. So I'm going to run and have some fun with this a little bit. One of the things that we want to do, though, is it took me a minute to figure out that when you're working with text, you have to create outlines from text, and those outlines that are created become what we call vector shapes. And so watch what I do here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and click. I've got my text selected. I'm going to go to this menu up here at the right, and you can just kind of see where my red circle is there. I'm going to click on that. That is my path menu. And for those of you who are new to Vectornator, everything over here is a menu, okay? But everything over here, where if you can follow my red, is a tool, okay? So tools are on the left and menus are on the right, okay? So what I'm going to do, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create outlines from text. And what this does is it takes text and it magically turns it into vector shapes in the form of text, in the shape of text, if you will. So watch what happens. Right now I have a box that is like a text box, but in just a minute, in just a second, it's going to turn that D and J into vector graphic files or vector graphic shapes, vectors that I can be able to sort of manipulate and play with a little bit.
Now it's time for What's Your Vector, Victor?
You're cleared for takeoff.
Roger. Huh?
LA departure frequency 123.9er.
Roger. Huh? Request vector. Over. What?
Flight 209er clear for vector 324.
We have clearance, Clarence. Roger, Roger. What's our vector, Victor?
Tower radio clearance over.
That's Clarence, over.
Over.
Roger. Huh?
Roger, over.
What? Huh?
Thank you for watching What's Your Vector, Victor?
And so I'm going to do that with my node tool over here. And the first thing I'm going to do is, so I'm going to click on this and sign, and all of a sudden you'll be able to see, and let me zoom in here, you'll see that this and sign, all of a sudden I can do some funky, weird stuff with that. And those are what we call nodes, okay? I'm going to hit Command Z to make sure it goes just back the way I want it to. Now, all of a sudden, now I have the outside of a D and then the inside of a D, and I've got a J. But like I said earlier, I want to be able to work with this and sign and sort of make it a little bit less intrusive. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click on, I'm going to go to my menu and I'm going to go to my arrange menu and I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to group all of that together, and I'm hoping that that's working. And now I'm going to move this and make it a little bit smaller. And sometimes, you know, you could make that and sign kind of fat, you can make it kind of thin, but if you take a finger and you put it on a second finger, it all of a sudden makes whatever you're trying to resize just a little bit more proportional and the way it ought to look, the proportion ratio it should have. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to hide the and a little bit closer into the J, which is something I like to do when I'm working with this kind of stuff. And then I'm going to select these two guys, and I want to group them. And so I'm going to go to my arrange menu, and I'm going to group these two guys. And now I should be able to kind of adjust them however I'd like to, okay? One thing that I'm not seeing a lot of is normally I have my guidelines on, but we're getting close to 20 minutes. So I want to make sure I close this lesson up soon. So I'm going to select the D and J, and just like I did the J and the and sign, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to group those two guys together, okay? And like I said earlier, we don't want to have any fills. We want to be able to just see the lines. So I'm going to come over here to I'm going to blind my fill, And for my stroke, I'm gonna make sure that my stroke is black and not white, okay? And right now I can see my stroke width is 1.0. Okay, so I'm really happy with how this is looking. There's only one more thing that I have to do for this owl box, and is I think I want to put a shape in here because I was telling you guys earlier, I want you to work with text and outlining text and nodes, but I want to throw one more shape in here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to my layers and I'm going to just call this one text square, okay? And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lock up all the layers and all the work I've done before, but I'm going to leave that text square layer unmessed with. I'm going to leave it open. It's unlocked. I can totally work with it. And I'm going to come over here to my shapes, and I'm going to put a square in here. Okay, so I'm going to kind of just start right here and start with my square, and I'm getting really close to where I like it to be. And I think I'm going to work with a little bit of a radius. So I'm going to come over here to my paintbrush, and you'll see corner radius right there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mess with my corner radius on this square a little bit. And I think I like it, but it's going to be getting in the way of my owl door as well. So I'm going to have to go to my owl door and mess with that some. But let me just put my square kind of where I want it to be. And remember, the machine that we're working with, and I'm going to pull this back up again. Remember, we're blinding the fill. All we're concerned with is the lines because the lines are what the machine's going to follow, okay? And, oh, man, I love the smell of pine. I went through and I ran this pine through my planer, and it's just, oh, it smells really good. I wish you guys could smell it. It smells great. All right, so I'm going to come over here, and I'm happy with my square. I'm going to come up to my layers. And I'm going to lock up that layer, but I got to move that owl door, that door at the top. So I'm going to choose, and you always got to make sure you come back to the tools, okay? So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to bring my owl door just a little bit higher so I've got some clearance away.
We have clearance, Clarence.
Roger, Roger. What's our vector, Victor?
And once I get it where I like it, there's another little trick of the trade I can do, is I can come over here and make sure that my D and J is unlocked, and I can take all of this and I can select it all together. I can come over here to my arrange menu and I can group it together. And now I can kind of adjust the whole thing where I want it to go. So I can, oops, what's going on? I'm still learning what those blue lines are. Forgive me, guys. So now I should be able to, even if I have to just use my arrows, which that's what I'm using right now, I'm using the arrows on the keyboard. I'm going to bring that down here and just kind of arrange it a little bit. Looks like my square didn't come down with me. I must have, I didn't, my text square, I didn't unlock that. So I'm just gonna use my arrows to bring that back down. Okay, so Mrs. Russell now has an owl box, okay? And it has a door, it has D and J, which stands for Dave and Jamie. And since even though I'm making it, we like owls up here, up in Valley Center, because owls kill snakes, especially the poisonous ones, like the rattlesnakes. Don't like rattlesnakes. Don't like rattlesnakes. Don't like rattlesnakes. Dangerous, right? You reach your hand in, and they can alter your health or make you very, very sick. So enough about that. All right. Well, we want to thank you guys for joining us. So, Mr. Bird, do you have any words of advice for your students?
Hey guys, I know this is a brand new app for you guys, and I know it's new. It might be hard, but I know we can do it, so let's push through. Guys, let's get started with these birdhouses.
I almost forgot. We got to learn how to export these. I'm so embarrassed. By the way, if you want to see the how-to on how we made the owl box, I'll be putting one of those videos together very soon as well. But let's take a minute here, and I'm going to come over here to my arrow. And remember earlier I told you want to name your project while it's in the gallery. So I'm going to click on my share square, and there's two files I'm looking for. One is a JPEG, and one is an SVG file. So let's start with the JPEG first, okay? Now, when I come over here to the JPEG, I'm going to click on custom size. Yep, that's what it is. Our quality is always going to be, we always want to drag your quality up as best you can. We're going to go ahead and click on export. We're going to save to files. And here there must have been a change or an update, But usually when you name your file, it will export as that named file. But we're going to call this D and J owlbox. Okay. And I'm going to hit done, and it's going to say, where do you want to save it? Now, I've already created a JPEG folder. You too can create a folder right here if you need to. Okay. But I've already done so. I'm just going to click on save and let that be done, and then I'm going to hit cancel over here. But I'm going to go to my share square because I need a second file called an SVG, which is a scalable vector graphic file. And I'm going to click on that, and contains errors. What in the world is going on here? Let's see if we can export it anyways. Let me hit cancel. Let me try doing this again. SVG. Interesting. I've never seen this before. Below is a rendering of the page. Let's try it anyways. So I'm going to go ahead and export, and I'm going to save to files. And of course, it still has that custom size. So I'm going to rename it D and J owlbox. Okay. And I'm going to hit done, and it's going to say, where do you want to save it? Now, I personally have an SVG folder as well. And again, like I said, you can totally click on a new folder if you'd like to. I like to keep my JPEGs in one folder and keep my SVG files in another folder. But I'm going to go ahead and hit save, and I should be done there. Now, if I want to go double check, these are the files that you would turn into your teacher. So I'm going to go to my file folder, and I'm going to quickly double check. Now, obviously, you can see you have the recents. Okay, so I'm looking at recents. But if I want to be very specific and find those folders where I put these files, I'm going to click on my iPad. I'm going to click on Vectornator. I'm going to click on Drawings. And then I have a JPEG folder and an SVG folder. And I can see it's 420 right now, and it's 421 where I made my SVG file. I'm going to open this up, and there's D and J owlbox. If I go back over here to my SVG files, there's a D and J owlbox. And there we have it. All right. Thanks for watching. God bless. Bye-bye.